Have you ever found yourself in a discussion where, despite all your efforts, you walked away feeling like you'd lost? Perhaps you felt that familiar knot in your throat, as if every word spoken had drained your energy and pushed you further from your own truth. You're surrounded by people who shout, interrupt, and dominate the conversation, mistaking arrogance for confidence. Deep down, you might believe that silence is a sign of weakness, that not defending yourself is an act of surrender. But what if I told you that this is all a carefully constructed illusion, that true power has never been in the noise, but in its absence? Nietzsche, one of the most misunderstood thinkers in history, saw something that few have the courage to admit. Those who talk too much reveal too much. Nietzsche understood that the need to convince others is a sign of profound weakness. We are taught to fight, to explain ourselves, to defend our ideas, as if every conversation were a battle for some universal truth. But Nietzsche proposed a different path, a more subtle, more lethal, and infinitely more intelligent one. He believed that silence is not just the absence of noise, it is an overwhelming presence. It's a force that disconcerts, destabilizes, and forces the other person to confront themselves. This video is for you if you've ever felt ignored, overshadowed, or invalidated. It's for you if you leave conversations with the feeling that no one truly heard what you meant to say. It's for you who are tired of being the nice one who keeps the peace while others take advantage of your calm demeanor. Perhaps you've confused your silence with submission, but today I will show you that silence can be your most powerful weapon, and that true victory doesn't come from winning an argument, but from never needing to enter one. Get ready to see silence in a new light, not as an absence of response, but as the definitive response itself. We will delve into Nietzsche's most provocative ideas and discover how to master any situation without saying a single word. He saw the modern world's obsession with constant chatter as a symptom of what he called the herd mentality, the frantic need to belong, to be accepted, and to be validated by the collective. True strength, he argued, lies in the ability to stand apart, to be a universe unto yourself, quiet and self-sufficient. Why do we feel such an overwhelming need to respond, to rebut, to correct, to prove we are right? Because, at our core, we've been conditioned to believe that truth must be defended at all costs, and that if we remain silent, we allow others to win. But Nietzsche saw this impulse as a symptom of our deepest weakness, the fear of appearing weak. And behind this fear lies a fragile ego that cannot withstand being questioned. This ego confuses disagreement with a personal attack, turning every conversation into a potential battlefield. Nietzsche believed that most people do not seek the truth when they argue. They seek power. They seek to reaffirm their beliefs, not because they are solid, but because if those beliefs are shaken, their entire world crumbles. Argumentation, in this sense, is not a tool of wisdom. It's a defensive armor, a desperate cry from the ego to maintain control of the narrative. And what does this mean for you? It means that when you feel compelled to justify yourself, to prove your point, you have already entered their game and lost. The simple need to justify your position reveals that you are still trapped in the desire to be accepted, validated, and understood. This is what Nietzsche called the herd morality, the behavior of those who live under the expectations of others, who want to be seen as good, correct, and just. But this quest for approval is exactly what keeps you weak. It's a constant surrender of your will to the will of others, a slow and agonizing erosion of your own identity in the service of a manufactured peace. True strength, Nietzsche said, lies not in convincing others, but in the complete lack of need to do so. It is in holding your vision, your truth, even in the face of ridicule, criticism, and rejection. It is in being misunderstood and remaining completely unshaken. What he proposed to us is a type of power that isn't measured in verbal victories, but in internal mastery. It's a power that comes from the ability to remain calm while everyone around you is losing control. This power grows when you stop reacting. If you truly want to win, you must understand this. The game of discussion is a theater, and the first person to stand up and act has already lost. Nietzsche knew that the reactive mind is a subjugated mind, the observing mind. That is the dangerous one. The observing mind is dangerous because it is above the need to prove anything. But if we should not react, how can we exert power over others? If words betray us, how do we make others feel our strength without uttering a single phrase? Nietzsche had an answer for that, and it lies in the ideal of the Übermensch, or overman, the being who transcends the limitations of common morality and dominates the world through absolute self-control. The Übermensch is not a figure of brute force or loud words, but a figure of quiet, unshakable will. He is the person who lives according to his own truth, unconcerned with the opinions of the masses, and this self-possession is a source of immense, almost supernatural power. In the next part, we will explore this figure and understand how he embodies the strategic use of silence as a weapon of dominance. Are you ready for this level? Because from here on out, silence begins to speak. The Übermensch does not live by reacting to the world. He shapes the world in his own image, and he often does this in complete silence. He doesn't need to win debates or engage in cheap emotional games. He observes, he understands, and he carefully chooses when to speak, and more importantly, when to remain silent. He has understood something that others ignore. Silence is a form of language, a language that doesn't try to convince, it imposes a presence. The silence of the Übermensch is not empty, it is a threat, it is authority, it is the sound of absolute self-mastery. While others shout, he commands respect with his gaze. While others frantically explain themselves, he observes and reveals their weaknesses merely with his calm. His silence is a wall. Those on the other side despair, trying to guess what lies behind it. And in that despair, they make mistakes. They reveal too much. They lose their balance. This silence is not passivity. It is an absolute control of one's own energy. It's a strategic economy of thought and emotion. The Übermensch knows that every spoken word is a revealed move. Every emotional reaction is an exposure of a weak point. That is why he remains quiet, not because he has nothing to say, but because he doesn't need to say anything. His presence already speaks for him, and more than that, it disturbs. His silence forces others to look within, to deal with their own noise in a society of relentless chatter. Nietzsche saw the Übermensch as one who creates his own values, his own rules, his own morality. He does not depend on anyone's validation, and that is why he is feared. Nothing destabilizes people more than an individual who cannot be manipulated by guilt, fear, or the need for acceptance. His silence is a shield against all these psychological mechanisms. And when he finally does speak, it is because his words are designed to topple an empire, to redefine a reality, or to end the discussion for good. But this raises an essential question. What makes silence so unsettling for others? Why do so many people feel threatened when someone simply chooses not to react? What happens inside the human mind when the expected confrontation is replaced by an overwhelming absence? The answer lies in psychology, and that is exactly what we will explore in the next part. Because to understand the power of silence, we first need to understand the chaos it generates in the minds of others. And believe me, it is much deeper than it seems. Silence is not just the absence of sound, it is a mirror, and what it reflects for many is unbearable. When you choose not to react, you aren't just silencing yourself. You are forcing the other person to hear their own voice, to confront their own arguments without the comfort of external resistance. And that That destabilizes them completely. Most people don't speak to express themselves. They speak to protect themselves, to convince themselves, to hide the emptiness that exists between what they say and who they are. When you remain silent, their disguise falls away, and their true vulnerability is exposed. Social psychology has already shown that in confrontational situations, silence is perceived as a form of judgment. It doesn't matter if you are just listening. The speaker begins to feel exposed, insecure, and anxious. Why? Because without your response, without your reaction, they lose control of the narrative. The human brain goes into a state of alert. The amygdala, the region of fear and anxiety, activates. The other person starts to project their own fears onto you. Is he judging me? Did he notice my insecurity? Does he know I'm bluffing? In this psychological battlefield, silence acts like an invisible blade. It cuts where no one sees, but where everyone feels. Nietzsche sensed this long before modern psychology confirmed it. For him, the average person lives as a slave to their reactions. They act on impulse, react out of vanity, and speak out of fear of being forgotten. The superior spirit, the one who masters themselves, remains silent because they know that every word given is a piece handed to the enemy. Every emotional reaction is an involuntary scream that reveals where to attack. Moreover, silence has a devastating effect on manipulators. People who thrive on the emotional control of others depend on your reactions to stay in the game. When you do not react, you break the cycle, and the manipulator panics. They need your response to validate their own position, and without it, they lose themselves. They reveal their weakness, the very weakness they've tried so hard to hide, but there's something even deeper at play. Silence also triggers unresolved pains. It activates traumas of rejection, abandonment, and humiliation. Suddenly, the other person realizes they are not the center of attention. Their words are not enough. Their presence doesn't make an impact, and this is intolerable for the narcissistic ego. That is why when you remain silent, you are not just defending yourself. You are attacking where it hurts the most, at the very center of their illusion. This is why silence requires immense strength. It is uncomfortable, not just for others, but for you as well, because it goes against everything you've been taught, against the impulse. To react, to justify yourself, to explain yourself. But it is precisely for this reason that it is so powerful, because it demands mastery, and mastery is true power. Now that you understand how silence operates in the mind of the other, how it activates insecurities, breaks down defenses, and unmasks postures, it is time to go further. It's time to stop being just an observer and become someone who uses this strength intentionally, strategically. In the next part, you will discover exactly how to transform silence into a conscious weapon, how to win any argument without saying a single word. And when you learn to do this, no one will be able to control you anymore. The time has come to stop merely understanding the power of silence and start using it, because knowledge without practice is just dead theory. From now on, you will learn to transform your silence into a precision weapon, no longer a defensive shield, but a sharp blade ready to cut through others' masks at the exact moment they least expect it. The first step is simple yet brutal. Be silent when your will screams for a response. This requires immense strength, because everything in you will want to react. It will want to justify itself. It will want to prove it's right. But that desire is poison. Every time you give in to it, you reveal that you are still under the control of others, that you still care about what they think, that you are still playing their game. True silence is born only when you kill that need. When you understand that you owe nothing to anyone, that the truth does not need to be spoken to exist. It exists in your very being, and that is all the validation it needs. You are the source of your own truth, not a vessel for the validation of others. The second weapon of silence is observation. While others talk, get lost in explanations, and try to fill the void with words, you listen. But you don't listen as someone waiting for their turn to speak. You listen like a hunter listens to the footsteps of prey in the forest. You perceive the fears hidden between the lines, the subtle contradictions, the insecurities disguised as arrogance. And you store all of this. Because when you speak, if you speak, it will be surgical. It will be with the precision of someone who has already mastered the emotional territory of the other person. You are not listening to engage, you are listening to understand, to diagnose, to find the weak point in their armor. The third weapon, time. Learn to let silence last. The pause is an element of tension, and tension is power. While the other person speaks, waiting for your reaction, and it doesn't come, they experience an internal collapse. The discomfort grows. Their mind begins to fill the void with assumptions, fears, paranoia. A simple look from you, accompanied by silence, can have more impact than 10 well-formulated sentences. You are using time as a weapon, allowing the pressure to build, forcing them to do all the work while you remain. Still, unmoving and in control, the silence becomes a canvas on which they paint their own insecurities. The fourth weapon, unpredictability. When you master silence, you become unpredictable, and the unpredictable is always feared. People don't know what to expect from you, and when they don't know what to expect, they lose their advantage. They become cautious. They start measuring every word. You invert the logic of interaction. From being reactive, you become the gravitational center of the conversation. At this point, silence is not absence, it is pure dominance. You are no longer just a participant in a conversation, you are the one who dictates the very rules of engagement. This unpredictability makes you a force to be reckoned with, a figure of authority in every room you enter. But be careful, do not confuse this silence with passivity. Nietzsche was never an advocate of weakness. The silence we're talking about here is active, tense, and charged with intention. You are not withholding, you are preparing. You are choosing. You are positioning yourself with a kind of strength that doesn't need to be displayed to be felt. And when the right moment comes, the moment when silence has already said everything it needed to, you can speak. A single sentence, a precise comment, something that ends the discussion not because it was louder, but because it was truer, deeper, and more undeniable. This is the silence of a warrior, not a coward. It is the silence of someone who holds the entire battlefield in their mind before making a single move. But this brings us to an even more delicate issue. Up to this point, we have talked about how to use silence to win. But there are moments when the game is not just about winning. It's about emotionally surviving. There are situations where people are not just debating with you. They are using you, manipulating you, draining you, and you, without realizing it, are giving away your power every day. You are being dominated, without a single word needing to be spoken. And that is where the darkest point of this journey comes in, when silence is no longer a strategy, but a silent scream from someone who has lost control of their own life. In the next part, we will expose this truth and show how you may be used without even realizing it. Is there anything more perverse than being silenced? It is being conditioned to think that silence is your only option, that swallowing your anger, conceding in discussions, and avoiding conflict at all costs is synonymous with maturity, that remaining silent is a sign of balance. But what if I told you that this could be a trap, that many times this type of silence is not wisdom, it is disguised submission? Nietzsche saw this with brutal clarity. What you call peace is often just your domesticated surrender. Have you noticed how some people take advantage of your calmness, your ability to listen, to overlook, to avoid confrontation? They push their ideas, impose their wills, and occupy spaces that were yours, and you let them. You convince yourself that it's not worth fighting, that it's better to maintain harmony, that it's not a big deal. But the truth is, you are paying a very high price for this false peace. And the worst part is, you are being used by those who understand that you will never react. Nietzsche spoke of the morality of slaves, that value system constructed by the weak to survive in a world dominated by the strong. It is the morality of resignation, of guilt, of being nice. It's an invisible code that teaches you to nullify yourself, to diminish yourself, and to conform, all while feeling virtuous for it. But Nietzsche did not write for those who resign themselves. He wrote for those who dare to break these chains. He wrote for those who realize they are being used and decide to stop participating in their own submission. When you accept this type of silence, the one that swallows you from within, you are surrendering your power without even realizing it. You are being shaped by the expectations of others. You are no longer yourself. You are what others need you to be. And this is the complete opposite of what Nietzsche called the will to power. The true will to power is not to shout. It is not to dominate others. It is to dominate oneself. It is to regain control of your own narrative. It is to be silent, not because you are afraid, but because you owe nothing to anyone. This silence of submission needs to die. And in its place, the silence of presence must be born. The one that does not bend, that does not humiliate, that does not apologize for existing. The one that stands up amidst chaos and without saying a word, changes the course of the situation. This is the silence that Nietzsche would respect, the silence of the individual who has become the master of themselves. But how do you reach this level? How do you move from being manipulated to being the master of your own presence? How do you kill the herd morality within you and be reborn as someone who imposes authority even when silent? The answer lies in the most powerful figure of Nietzsche's philosophy, the Übermensch. We have already talked about him. Now it's time to understand how to become one. In the next and final chapter, you will discover what it takes to embody this new type of human being. Because the world does not need more talkers. It needs those who master silence and reign with it. We have reached the final point, and now I need you to understand one thing with all possible clarity. Silence is not absence. It is not emptiness. It is not a space between sentences. True silence is pure presence. It is mastery. It is the sign that you are no longer reacting to the world. You are shaping it with your mere existence. Nietzsche never wrote for those who are content to survive. He wrote for those who want to transcend. He wrote for those who are willing to tear off the masks that society imposed, even if it hurts. The silence of the Übermensch is not the silence of the oppressed, nor of the coward. It is the silence of the warrior who has already won even before the battle begins. It is the stillness of one who no longer needs to prove anything to anyone, because he knows who he is, and more importantly, he knows what he deserves. Now look at your life. How many times have you remained silent out of fear, out of guilt, out of not wanting to disturb? How many times have you let others decide for you, speak for you, and trample over your truth? Enough. Nietzsche would say that living this way is an offense to existence itself, that accepting this kind of silence is betraying yourself. From today on, your silence needs to change its tone. It needs to stop being an escape and become an invisible shout of authority, a boundary, an affirmation of who you are, even if no one understands. Because who you are does not need to be understood. It needs to be lived. And that requires courage. Do you have that courage? Then comment below. I choose the silence that commands respect. Not just so I know you made it this far, but so you can publicly affirm this choice, this commitment to yourself. Because words have power, even when they speak about silence. Don't stop here. This is not the end of the journey, it is the beginning. The next video is essential. It will expand on what you learned here and take your mind even further. Watch it, not for me, but because you deserve to go beyond. And remember the weak shout. The strong remain silent. The wise choose when. The essence of Nietzsche's philosophy is not about becoming a tyrant, but about becoming a sovereign individual. It is about seizing control of your inner world, your thoughts, your reactions, and your emotions. This is the ultimate form of power, not power over others, but power over yourself. The silence we've discussed today is a manifestation of this internal sovereignty. It is the quiet confidence of a person who has done the hard work of self-discovery and self-mastery. This person doesn't need to dominate conversations because their very existence is a statement of dominance. They don't need to win arguments because they have already won the most important battle of all, the one within. The Übermensch in this context is not a fictional character, but a potential state of being for every one of us. It is the version of yourself that is free from the need for external validation, the version that lives by its own code and creates its own values. This is the freedom that Nietzsche championed, a freedom not from responsibility, but from the chains of societal expectation. It is a terrifying freedom for most because it demands that you stand alone. But for those who embrace it, it is the only path to true strength and self-respect. Your silence, therefore, becomes a monument to this freedom, a visible sign that you are no longer a part of the herd. This journey from reactive noise to deliberate silence is a profound transformation. It requires you to confront your own fears, insecurities, and impulses. It demands that you sit with your own discomfort and resist the urge to fill the void with words. It is in this uncomfortable silence that you begin to hear your own voice, the voice of your authentic self, the voice that has been drowned out by the noise of the world. By mastering silence, you are not just outsmarting others, you are reclaiming your own mind. You are building an unshakable inner fortress that no one can penetrate with their words or their manipulations. So, as you go back into the world, remember this. Your silence is a shield against the toxicity of others. It is a sword that cuts through their lies and their manipulations. It is a mirror that forces them to confront their own chaos. It is a monument to your own self-mastery. But most importantly, your silence is a promise to yourself. A promise that you will no longer betray your own truth for the sake of a false peace. A promise that you will no longer surrender your power in the name of being nice. Your silence is your truth, and your truth is your power. The path of the Übermensch is lonely, but ultimately liberating. It is a rejection of the comfort of conformity in favor of the difficult but rewarding journey of self-creation. The constant chatter and need for validation that define modern life are, in Nietzsche's eyes, a sign of spiritual sickness. The person who finds their strength in silence is the one who has found the cure. They have transcended the petty dramas and the fleeting opinions of others to focus on the one thing that truly matters, the cultivation of their own will and the creation of their own destiny. So, the next time you feel the urge to react, to defend, to explain, pause. Feel the power of that silence. Let it fill the room. Let it unnerve the other person. Let it give you the space you need to choose not to react. In that moment of stillness, you will realize that you are not losing, you are winning. You are not surrendering, you are ascending. You are not a part of their game, you are the one who has already left the board. And in that ultimate act of silent departure, you will discover the dangerous, undeniable and sovereign power of your own stillness.